right, welcome everyone. We're just going to give it a minute or two just to let more people join before we kick on. And shouldn't be too long before we start. But if you want, feel free to drop in the Q&A or the chat where you are joining us from. We've got 3 people sitting in the UK. Filip himself is in Europe, in Denmark. So I wonder what's the weather like for you over there?
It is very grey and boring.
So you could,
Same as London,
could be sitting with us. You could basically be sitting with
probably.
us. All right. Well, I think we have a lot to get through today, so we will kick on. So welcome everybody to our kickoff virtual event for the year. Before we dive into the session, I do have a few standard things to share. Firstly, we are recording the session, so there's no need for you to take any notes. We will share the recording link afterwards, and you are free to share this on with your networks too. We will try to leave some time aside at the end for questions. As I said, we have quite a bit of stuff to get through today, but drop your questions or comments into the Q&A. We'll try to get to them at the end, or if it's relevant, one of the panelists might even choose to address it at the time that they are answering a question. And lastly, the general one-liner about who we are and why we're qualified to host the session. If you haven't heard of ClerksWell yet, we are an award-winning digital agency that specializes in building, managing, and hosting websites. We are Umbraco and Microsoft Gold partners, a Sitecore Silver partner, and an Optimises Bronze partner. My name is Mara. I am the Marketing and Partnership Lead, and most importantly, your host for today's session. So now we get into all the good bits. So I'm going to hand over to our panelists at this point and let them introduce themselves to you. Filip, why don't we start with you?
Sure. My name is Filip. I'm the CTO at Umbraco. So I head up our product and engineering teams or department. And yeah, so I guess I set the general direction and like vision for the products.
Thank you, Filip. Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm the head of digital at the Association of the British Pharmaceutical Industry, the ABPI. So I'm the only person doing digital in this organization of about 50 people.
I think a lot of people today will share some with you on that one. Kat?
Thank you, Mara. So my name is Kat and I'm a Chief Operating Officer here at ClerksWell. Just a little bit of background on myself. So my journey with ClerksWell began about 8 or 9 years ago when I was actually on the client side. So I used to be a client of ClerksWell's. I really enjoyed working with ClerksWell so much that I decided to switch sides about 5 years ago, and I moved to the agency side and never looked back since. Thank you, Mara, for hosting us today, and I look forward to the discussion.
Well, thank you, and thank you to all 3 of you. A warm welcome to our panel on how to enhance your digital presence with multi-sites. Right, so let's set the scene. In this fast-paced world where brands and organizations are constantly competing for audience attention, effective on-brand communication and content plays a crucial role in building our businesses. To stand out, it's obvious we need to be remarkable and noticeable to our target audiences. But just as important is the organization of this content and communication. So managing our digital brands, products, and content flexibly and efficiently is crucial, and even more so for those organizations that have multiple brands to manage under one global identity. Lockdown played a key role in getting businesses online. It sort of was a catalyst. And as a result, we've seen how today's digital landscape is far more complex and vibrant than ever before. We're seeing more and more organizations across all sectors and industries managing multiple brand identities and therefore websites. But we're also seeing how organizations are kind of struggling to create a cohesive structure where all of the brands are unified under one digital estate that is easy to manage for them. And in most cases where, they are the only person that is managing it all. And so the big focus for us today is really to answer one important question, and that is, how do we ensure a consistent easy to manage online branding of all individual brand identities and their content. So let's dive in. Michael, I thought we would start with you because you have recently gone through this digital transformation at ABPI. And I wondered if you could share what your digital estate looked like before and what finally drove you to make a change in the first place.
Thank you, Mara. I'm a experienced digital marketer. Been looking after websites for about 20 years in different businesses. I came to the ABPI about 7 years ago because they were moving from SharePoint. So when I came to business, I was looking at the move of the platform from SharePoint to Umbraco. Quite straightforward. It then transpired, what kept popping up were different websites. I had no idea were part of the business. In total, we had 14 different websites that were branded, doing different campaign ideas. And some of them were live and some of them were dead, but they were still out there. And I must say, it gave me the worst fear ever. I had no control over these things. The worst thing is the people I was going to talk to had left the business. I had a whole range of different kind of businesses, domain names, agencies, technologies such as Drupal and Typo3. You may not have heard these things, but neither did I. And all that kind of confusion. And someone looked at me and said, "Are you going to fix this?" And that's when I realized we needed something a little bit more robust than just the website. It was more of a strategy to take us forward and try and work out what had happened, why people had done this stuff, and what I could do to make a difference.
Well, it definitely feels like it was all over the place. So one can imagine for someone that hasn't done this before, it might look very confusing and overwhelming. So Filip, from a technical perspective, what would you usually see in terms of the setup for somebody embarking on a project like this, trying to move everything all onto one platform? What would be some of the non-negotiables that you would want to see?
Well, I think there's a few different parts to it. I think the first decision to make is really, do you want to use the same platform but in like multiple instances for each of the brands or each of the sites, or do you want to use the same platform in like one instance? And I think there's pros and cons to both of those approaches. I think the most important thing is that you don't have as Michael is saying, like 8 different systems running 8 different sites, because that makes it impossible to maintain and to develop on and to share stuff between, and for your editing team and for everybody, that's just not a great way to do it. What we see with Umbraco is really a lot of both. Some choose one over the other for cost reasons. It might be more effective to run one project with 10 websites inside of the same install. But if you're doing lots of rapid development on each of them and you want to maybe be able to deploy one independent of the other one or something like that, having individual websites but actually on the same platform might also be a good fit. We have for Umbraco specifically, I don't want to talk only about Umbraco, but for Umbraco specifically, we have in our cloud a feature that we call baselines, which is basically trying to give you the best of both worlds, where you have like individual projects for each of your entities or each of your brands, but you can still share some of your source code, and you can share content, and you can push changes out independently of each other and stuff. So I think making that first initial call of, do we want to have one platform with everything in it, or do we want to have like individual platforms but that actually works together, I think that's probably a good way to start.
Interesting. Kat, working at an agency like ClerksWell that has been around for almost 3 decades, working in digital projects and project like ABPIs, I'd be curious to know if you've picked up on any trends or commonalities over the years, and what considerations you might advise clients to take on for something like this.
Sure, thanks, Mara. So just to kind of like add to what Michael and Filip are saying, many clients approach us when they need to spin up some microsites for particular campaigns or potentially for large events. These microsites are often temporary, but they're very highly targeted sites designed to promote a particular initiative or particular type of content. So this type of setup, like microsite setup, is usually preferred by clients due to its flexibility. And the flexibility is in managing the content itself. So the beauty of having the multi-site setup is that it allows clients to reuse the components that they already have within the main site, but it still allows you to have a completely separate look and feel. So for example, this is exactly what Michael has for ABPI. In terms of considerations, I would probably say choose the right CMS from the start. So it kind of like really goes well with what Filip was saying earlier. So it will really prevent organizations from going into the technical debt. And I don't know if any of my technical people are on the call today, but they would really appreciate me say this. What do I mean by the technical debt? It's when you have various different platforms here and there and everywhere, and then you need a project basically to reassemble everything back together. So we've seen this happen with small to medium membership organizations where different teams are responsible for different areas of the business. They set up campaign sites using various different platforms like WordPress, Wix, Michael mentioned Drupal earlier as well. So they set up the campaigns using these platforms, and although they achieve the goal at the time because they can do it quickly and they can make those decisions, I think managing those websites gets really out of hand very quickly. And I particularly want to call out two things here. It's the analytics tracking. So when there are different platforms, different websites set up here and there and everywhere, analytics gets out of hand. And as one of my colleagues actually says, you're no longer comparing apples and apples. You kind of have a little bit of orange here and maybe some plums in there. So, and the second bit I want to call out is the CRM integrations, which are particularly important for the membership organizations as well. So if you don't set it up properly, then the whole thing gets out of hand. So yeah.
So true, so true. Michael, you mentioned earlier that you are the only person right now doing digital at ABPI and possibly that cares about digital. So what piece of advice can you give to others that are maybe in a similar position as you, trying to get buy-in from key stakeholders to actually, move into this transformation and get out of this technical debt?
I think debt is actually quite a good point to make, first of all. Kind of going back to my original situation, when I looked at the paperwork of the websites that were there, 14 websites that cost £10,000 each is a significant amount of money. And that was just in effect wasted because it wasn't actually cohesive. I couldn't use it again. And so what I wanted to do was to go to the business and say, actually, I've got a better idea. There is, instead of wasting money like this, we can do things differently. But obviously you've done something because the website that the main corporate website wasn't able to do the main stuff that you wanted to do. So I had a chat with each of the kind of key C-suite leaders to ask them, what is it they are trying to achieve? And they said, maybe it's a small site that's really targeted. So it's a microsite that they can just launch, run, and then switch off. I looked at that and said, okay, does it always need to be a microsite? Because we can lose some website activity by doing it that way. Could it be another feature that we could create so the website is still part of the main corporate site? And they said, I don't actually care. It's your job is to find a solution. My job is to look at the content and work at what's important for us. So if you can find a better solution which works with you, I'll take that lead. I said, okay, then if I can produce it for zero cost and I have all the risk and manage it for you, and your content team can just add the Word document content into the website, that'd be good. Yeah, great, fine. So everyone actually realized what they wanted to do is just have a copy and paste feature that they can control quite easily, that I would manage for them centrally. I could reduce their costs, reduce their risks. And so that's what I set about doing. And by going to each of them in turn and saying, I think there's a better way to do your project. Are you happy for me to take it forward? They all agreed. I mean, it's a Japanese technique, nemawashi, which is to get all that agreement beforehand from each person. So when they come to the the C-suite board meeting, decide on investing, you know, £100,000 plus on a single platform that has this kind of multi-site functionality, they're all prepared to go for it. So that's how I did it. I know it's a very long way to kind of do it, but no one really wants to be embarrassed by saying, you know, you've done the wrong thing. They've done it because they're focused on the business, and my job is focused on the website, but my job is to solve their problems. So by doing it that way, they kind of trusted me. And by taking the pressure off them to find the right website and the right provider and the hosting, and I just taken a lot of pressure off them. So by doing that, I solved their problem and have taken control. So that's the way that I've done it.
Almost a little bit of internal marketing, you know, figuring out exactly what their pain points and headaches are, and then coming up with an outcome to solve it.
Yes, very much so.
Now, you know, ABPI's new digital estate is built on Umbraco. We've touched on this, and we will dive into the impact and success later in the session. Right now, I'm curious to learn from you, Filip. You know, you've spoken briefly about the baseline feature, but what else would make Umbraco a good choice for projects like this, specifically for a multi-site setup?
Well, I mean, Umbraco is really built to let you do your thing, and for us to, you know, help you and assist you, but get out of your way. And that means that when it comes to stuff like this, all of the features with like handling multi-sites, either within the same solution or as separate, all of that is out of the box functionality in Umbraco. So really, like it's how Umbraco was meant to be used. So whether you have one site or 10 sites in the same install, it's basically the same Umbraco that you run. So there's not a lot of difference from my perspective. There's not a lot of difference from running just one site in Umbraco or running multiple sites.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about what all of goes in towards starting a project like this. Let's talk a bit about the process and the roadmap for developing a stable, scalable digital estate like ABPI's. Kat, how does an agency typically approach a project like this?
Sure. So I'm guessing I want to probably divide my answer into a couple of different buckets, if you want to call them that. So we'll start with the actual process, because you started with that, Mara. So within the process bucket, we've got really important things like onboarding. So at ClerksWell, we have a thorough onboarding process, and whether it's for a new client or for an existing client, it's always important to have an alignment session. Then it's often followed by things like requirements gathering. It's really important to understand the requirements that the client has and what are the key goals that they are aiming for. And then you go into the fun bits like UX, UI. You go into your build and obviously testing and development kind of thing. And then of course, you know, followed by UAT and production. So that's the kind of like process itself. Not going to bore everybody too much with it, but, you know, onboarding and requirements gathering are probably the most important ones that I would call out. And then the second bucket is a little bit more human, in my opinion, and it's all around trust and communication and transparency and relationship with the client. So I'll start with open communication. So clients need to trust that the agency understands their vision, goals, challenges associated with the project. And likewise, the agency must trust that the client will provide accurate information, timely feedback, you know, all the necessary resources throughout the project. Then there's the transparency bit. So clients need assurances that agency is transparent about the timelines, the budgets, the potential obstacles, any deviations from the original plan. And we know it's all kind of stuff that we face day to day. And I'm guessing the last bit within that bucket is collaboration. So trust encourages collaboration and teamwork, and both sides, agency and client, must work together to overcome all the challenges, make informed decisions, and ensure successful execution of the project. And then the last bucket is kind of last but not least. I think it's the relationship with the technology partner. I think agencies heavily rely on platform capabilities and visibility of the roadmap. And it's really, really important, because this is the only way that we can take our clients on the most kind of like optimal journey, the best possible kind of journey that, you know, will fit their budget, fit their timelines, and will be suitable for the client. And then, of course, you know, it's worth mentioning things like training and development. You know, the relationship with your technology partner will ensure that you have that in place, you know, and you know, that your resources will service your clients properly?
Well, I think at this point, we are pretty eager to see what this actually looks like and what the impact is, Michael. So I do have some of your slides here to share with everyone. So I'm going to pull them up, and then you can kind of walk us through some of the pieces of work that happened and the impact. So let me get that up. Right, so take it away, Michael.
So you mentioned COVID. Now, it's clearly one of the most important things that's happened to most people. So I mentioned before that the ABPI is responsible for new medicines and vaccines. Now, before, people hadn't heard of us, but they certainly heard of us at the COVID crisis. So businesses were working really hard to create brand new vaccines and systems and engagement with government. And we're the team that was pulling it together to help government get that content really quickly. Now, previously, what a company might have done, what we might have done, is just make another microsite and just worked away. Actually, we didn't even have to do a microsite. What we did was created a hub, which was in effect a subset in the main site that has the ability to take on its own navigation, which is really controlled, and then link that to other content in our website. So we just kept people inside the site. This was really stable, highly effective, and really easy for the team to maintain. What it meant was that I wasn't the only person updating it. They're updating themselves, but it was constrained so they could do that work safely. Now, that's the flexibility that I was talking about when I rolled out this project. And then when it came to the kind of war footing, it then demonstrated its real value. And so that was really important for us. We've also now started to kind of do more of this kind of hub element inside the main body of it. So we've done a COP28 microsite in the same way. So nobody ever talks about having another site off the platform. Everyone feels at least they can get what they need even from the main core website. So that's been really successful for us. And we have cut costs, and so they don't have to actually go outside and bid for that. So we have made a real saving every time we do it now.
Fascinating. It's a very interesting approach for sure. And I think, yeah, the next one.
But of course, there are some times when only a microsite will do. And I'm talking about microsites. We talk about multi-sites, but a microsite is, for example, we have done something different. So we don't want all of our branding of the ABPI on it. We want to kind of move away a little bit or work with a partner. So we kind of debrand a little bit. So what we have is the core functionality in a microsite from Umbraco that we can skin up really quickly. We can add content as we wish. So we have a project which is bringing together a special database that's, I think it's pulling in like 15 data sources that government have. That's, unless you know where to find it, it's very difficult to get the information. We've pulled it together so you can actually have a map of the UK and see exactly the benefits our industry will contribute to your area. Now, that's important for most people, but in a time where MPs are looking to retain their jobs or new candidates are looking to come forward, that information is really important. So what we have is a microsite. It has one page, it has an iframe which pulls through this content from our developer, and it works really well. Again, we didn't have to pay for that. We could do that really quickly, and with ClerksWell's help, we can then get the domain name in place to support it. And that just saved us so much time and gave us real control. And again, just I must say about 10 days ago, I was asked by the business to prepare a pilot website. And so what you see on the kind of the bottom feature there is another tool which is pulling in an iframe with some other content this group has created. And what that is a module to teach medical students about the pharmaceutical industry. We're trying to find a way to promote this and give it away for free so that universities can take it up. Now, I did this without ClerksWell having to do any work for it. I just created a microsite, gave it a name, had a format, put the content in, and it was ready to go. Now, that is the flexibility that my business needs from me, and that's what I can do without even engaging my design agency, because they've provided the structure for me to do that. So that's the kind of flexibility that I've always wanted, and actually I'm getting now. So that's been really useful for me. So again, I've talked about microsites, we talked about multi-sites. I think when you have 1 or 2 pages for a campaign, you can call it a microsite. But actually, we have on our platform, we have 2 major multi-sites, our corporate site and our school site. You know, that 1,000 pages and 500 pages isn't much compared to other companies, but the traffic they get for us are quite important. You know, over 100,000 for the corporate site, and 150 for the school site, and an international audience too. So I have stability from that platform. I have flexibility as well. And so I think that's really important for me, is that one, if I start a small site, a microsite, but then it starts to grow, like maybe the module for the universities, if that grows, I know that I can scale it up. So the microsite will become a very large multi-site, and there's no need for me to change platform or to or change anything else. So again, it's really scalable for me.
Right. Well, thank you for that, Michael. I think it's pretty clear that you have definitely built a scalable and flexible, easy to manage digital estate. What I've sort of deduced from our discussion and generally speaking, the best thing about creating a digital estate from the same platform and environment is that your virtuous features are amplified, and by that I specifically mean, you know, web accessibility, website performance, and digital sustainability. Now, I don't think that we will have time to dive into each of these topics today, but one of these that I am increasingly seeing more and more chatter about online is the digital sustainability component. And so my question that I put to each of you now is on the topic of digital sustainability. How are you seeing it in your how are you seeing it being treated, and is it becoming more of a priority for each of you? And I think, Filip, why don't we start with you?
Yes, it is very much a priority for us, both because we think it's important and we want to be part of saving the world, but of course also because, like, for business reasons, like we have this has become part of a lot of tenders and stuff where we need to start reporting, and I mean, with some of the new EU regulation coming on sustainability and corporate social responsibility, there's lots of new requirements that will, you know, soon affect all of us. So I think by being ahead on this, I think we can really make a big difference for many of our customers in trying to make this easy for them to report on, like how much carbon was emitted from my website or from my traffic or something like this. So what we're doing specifically, other than, I think the first thing, of course, is like giving people awareness, like how much are we actually doing, or how am I doing compared to other websites and stuff. But also there's a part of it that is, you know, how do we actually help you be better? And I think there's a great opportunity for us to, along with all of our partners, you know, to teach and to help people in building websites smarter. And a lot of it comes down to best practices that we've been talking about for years, that also, you know, makes your website run faster, because a lot of times, you know, what's faster is also more efficient, and efficient is less power needed, and at the end of the day, that's less carbon burned, right? So there's a lot of stuff that we already know and that we've all known for a while that we just need to do better at. And then I think on the topic of multi-site specifically, of course, there is that. Make sure that you then choose a platform that is doing well, because if you put all your eggs in one basket, you got to make sure that it's a good basket, right? I mean, a couple of years ago, I don't know, 3 years ago or something, we changed a lot of the underlying technologies underneath Umbraco. So we went from an old Microsoft technology to a newer one. And what we saw was that when customers started adopting this, we saw about like 50% less server was needed. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's half of your emissions that are gone just by making sure that you're on a modern platform. So there's significant significant savings to be made just from choosing the right platform. And then, of course, as I think with I mean, just to refer back a little bit to what you said about accessibility and stuff, it's a lot of the same. Like if you do it right from the start, it's not too much extra work. But if you have to retrofit it, it's so painful and it takes so long and it's so expensive. So do it right, choose your right platform from the beginning and do your stuff right, and you'll be good.
Very interesting points there. Kat, anything to add?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Filip. Just to kind of like maybe dive a little bit deeper into a couple of things, you know. First of all, we're very keen on sustainability at ClerksWell, and you know, I'm really pushing my team hard to make sure that we kind of like are on par with all of our peers and, you know, are where we need to be. I think that the multi-site setup supports sustainability on different fronts, and I'm just going to touch on a couple of those very, very briefly. So I think we've spoken about some of those already, but just to kind of like summarize it. So it's the centralized management, so organizations can manage different websites from a centralized platform. So this reduces the duplication of effort and obviously minimizes the resources required to maintain and update each site individually. So that's number one. It's the scalability, number two. So multi-site architecture is highly scalable. So organizations can easily add or remove websites as needed. And I think Michael mentioned it earlier today as well. So that fits in quite well. And to support Filip, you know, by doing the setup properly from the start, we remove the need to require a major migration project or, you know, a huge discovery to try and identify where are all these websites, you know, and therefore we promote long-term sustainability. And then I guess the last but not least, it's the consistent branding and messaging. So as we know, consistent user experience not only enhances the brand identity, but it also ensures that the information on the website is really clear and consistent. This therefore reduces the time that the users spend on the page, simply because they can find the information that they were looking for very easily, and therefore this reduces the carbon footprint.
Thank you,
If I can
Kat.
just add one thing to that, I would say, you know, make sure that you also not only choose the right platform, but you also choose the right partner, right? Like the implementation partner is crucial, because at the end of the day, there is not one silver bullet. There is lots of it depends, and getting the it depends right is just as important as choosing the platform right. Because as we said, like if you get that wrong and you need to change it later, it's a pain. So make sure that you get someone who understands what sustainability is actually about, and who understands when is it right to do it this way, or when is it right to do it the other way. Because I mean, there are of course some cases where there's only one right solution, but in most cases it's a trade-off.
Thank you, Filip, for that. Michael, anything to add from an ABPI perspective? How is the organization treating digital sustainability?
It's important. The whole pharmaceutical industry, when it works with the NHS looks for green partners in its entire process. That's the manufacturing of this medication, to packaging, to transportation. And that's really quite important for us. Now, we don't make anything. So what we do have is our website is really quite important for our use. So we hold ourselves to the same sort of standards. What we try to say is our website is as sustainable as we can make it. Now, you know, all people will say to me in the business, why have we moved from version 7 to version 10? Why are we going from version 10 to version 13? And what I have said is, when we look at the performance of it, how efficient our pages are, how much carbon dioxide do they give off if it was a page. The previous version was okay. The new version, version 10, is way better. We are kind of 63% better than some of the other competition. And some of these are world-leading pharma companies. Now, that was really exciting for my CEO to hear that and see the evidence so that he could just very gently tell the others, how well we're doing and how we are doing our bit to support the industry's drive. But I think what's important as well is the issue of accessibility. Now, what's important is accessible websites go faster, and going faster, use less energy. We've talked about this before. Web experience is really quite tied up to speed as well. So if you can get an efficient website which goes faster and is more accessible, the content structured better, then you're using less energy to deliver experience. And that's actually quite important for us too. So, and I think, as always, I'm always looking ahead to the future, to what Google does. And Google likes efficient websites. It likes clear websites. So I can get all these virtuous things in one go. If I can get the platform right and get the build right and the construction right, that's quite important. I think important for me as well is that I often have directors who come to me and say, I've seen this feature on a website. Can we have it in ours? And then I look at it and say, I don't think you can. So I go off to ClerksWell and they say, this isn't a very efficient system. And so as the partner, they can give me a technical read, which I can then feed back to the business. Say, actually, this isn't efficient. It's not compliant. And so that helps. So as Filip says, having the right partner can make a difference. So I don't end up having this technical debt built into my designs.
Thank you for that. That's very, very interesting. You touched on web performance and accessibility without me having to ask follow-up, but I will anyway. I would be curious to find out more about the web performance side of things, and anything that you are doing at ABPI in terms of your website to improve the efficiency.
Website efficiency. I think one of the things that we are looking at, again, we are about to go into a new phase of our website. So we're going to have a redesign, and that's actually quite important for us. And what I've said to the team is that we need to keep moving forward, because one of the things that we are involved with is making sure our information is accessible to patients, as accessible as possible. And a lot of these patients who are us as people have different needs. So making it accessible is quite important. Becoming accessible takes effort, and effort has cost. So what I've said to the business is we are going to reach the WCAG 2.2 standard by the end of the year. That's really what we're going for. And when we're doing that, we are committing to a number of things as a statement for our business. So again, all these virtuous things come aligned. And then by the end of the year, we'll be able to report back on the efficiency, the engagement that we have with our website, the accessibility using a set of various tools. And by the end of the year, we'll have all that as part of our next phase.
Thanks for that. Filip, we'll go back to you. What is one piece of advice that you would impart on developers or tech leads that are working on a project like this?
So I think probably one of the trends we see in bigger organizations a lot these days is UI libraries. Being able to share UI components even between multiple different visual identities, because a lot of times you might have 8 different sites with 8 different visual identities, and they need to look different but consistent, and they have used their own fonts and their own everything. But a lot of times, at least in the old school days, that meant that you had to implement stuff over and over again. Whereas we see a trend towards like having user interface library of like components that works for the front end user, and that means that you can do that effort of making them fast and making them accessible only once, and then they work across all of your brands, and that's really a big enabler. We see that more and more. We see that even people building that out, even if they're doing just one identity, because it still makes sense and it makes it more portable. Like if you then want to take it on your phone, or if you want to take it somewhere else, all of your UI components can still translate between different channels. So I think that's probably a nice place to start, and it's kind of independent of whatever solution you go with, whatever platform you choose, whether you're in the same or have a different one. So like all of these, I would say a UI library is a good place to start.
Mhm. Great. Kat, I have a similar question to you, and that's around, one piece of advice from an agency perspective in terms of the onboarding side of things. So what advice for an agency onboarding a client on a project like this do you have?
Yeah, I think it would be sort of like where I started this webinar, it's understanding your client's specific needs and objectives. And by this, I mean, the target audience, the content strategy, the brand guidelines, desired functionality, the KPIs, and of course, clear communications and alignment on the requirements. This is what I think is going to really help and avoid misunderstandings and misalignings on the development front.
Very true. And Michael, from a client perspective, I suppose, what would you give in terms of advice for organizations wanting to now also take this next step in their digital transformation journey?
Okay, I think one of the things we're looking at is making sure we get value for money. And so again, approach I've used and works really well is talking to the C-suite when they've seen this website work as well as it does, to realize that the CMS isn't a static thing. It needs to keep evolving. We need to keep upgrading to keep it ready for us, get the next benefit, and also because our website is the shop of our business, it reduces our risk. And from that buy-in, I can then say, if we've got a large site, we can do it. If it grows, it's no cost. If we have a new site we want to put in, I can do that at no cost. So all these things come as extra features. For me, having the right partner, I think we talked about before, is quite important. So having someone who understands what it is we're trying to achieve is quite relevant. So again, I've talked about the website plan we're doing this year, but we planned that last year. So I work really closely with my agency, you, to say these are the things that we want to do next year. What should we do now? What should we do later? How much might it cost? Can you give me a budget plan so I can then put those things in? I get them approved early, and then everyone understands what's coming up next year. There is no stress in that, and it's just one more thing that the business leaders don't need to worry about. They know the website is stable. They know that it's going to be available for whatever they want. And that really makes things, I think, so much easier. I think one of the key benefits is having an agency that is the right fit for you. Now, I've been in other businesses where I've worked with really, really large agencies, and I've realized that we are just too small a business for them to take care of properly. And actually, we are not a very large business, and we work with an agency who match us with their skill and people who know our business. And so people can connect to us and give us recommendations because they know our content really well. And for me, I'm not just working on my own, I'm actually working with an extended team. So that works really well for us. So I think all these factors are important, but I think for me, getting the C-suite to understand the investment of the CMS is critical.
Yeah, that buy-in for sure. You've touched a little bit on what I would like to ask as sort of the final question before we go on to the Q&A, and that is, again, for all of you. So the final parting question, I suppose, is, what is the secret sauce of a successful project? We've got an agency, a client, and a technology partner on the panel today, and I think it would be really helpful, and I think our audience would love to know what kind of is the magic that makes a project like this successful. So Kat, why don't we start with you?
I think you answered the question for me, Mara, already in a way. So I think it's some of the things that we all said today. So it's the thorough research, it's the clear objectives, robust platform, i.e. your trusted technology partner, and trusted agency. That's my secret sauce.
You've got to get just the right amount for each one to make it work.
Exactly that.
And Philip, what about you?
Well, I would say, I agree with everything Kat said, and I think it sums up pretty well what we've been talking about. What I would say, if you're standing out to build a product, or like if you're starting from scratch now, other than getting all of this right that you said, I would say don't forget about your editors. I mean, a lot of times we think about our users, and of course the users are the most important part, but a lot of times we let our editors, like the people who actually work in the platform, who does the content editing, who does all of that, we forget about them, and we end up giving them a terrible experience and making their work not super efficient. And it doesn't have to be a trade-off between the user and the editor. So making sure that you build a great editing experience is probably also a good return on investment, because that makes your editors work faster, and they're more happy, and they don't, they like the platform. And I think that's pretty important. And in most of the platforms out there today, you can do lots of stuff. Like if you don't like the experience out of the box of the platform, you can change stuff. You can customize it to work exactly as you want to. And I guess my addition to what Kat said is basically, don't forget about your editors.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Good point. Michael, anything to add?
Yes. I think for me, the most important factor is the agency relationship with myself, seeing it as a partnership, because these things are 7 years, 10 years. It's a lot of money and investment, and so it's actually quite important for us. So that partnership is quite important. And actually, why do I choose it? I mean, there's many companies it might use this platform, but as Filip says, you need someone who understands what it is they're doing. For us, it's really nice to have kind of these MVPs, these really experienced and globally acknowledged experts in Umbraco working with us. And we had a challenge we wanted to try and solve, and then we had Paul Seal, who just came in and produced a solution which fixed our problem, but fixed it for the Umbraco community globally. Now that's not something you get every day. And so when I'm talking to my C-suite saying, actually, this is the kind of people we have inside our partnership, it just makes it easier for them to understand the benefit. So for me, that partnership is really important.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for that name drop there for Paul. For everyone watching, I think Paul's not on here today, but he is a 6-time MVP and our very own Umbraco tech leader. We are pretty proud of his achievements. So thank you, Michael, for that lovely appreciation post. So I think we will wrap up there. I can see that we have a question coming in here for you, Filip. So the question is, what would you say is Umbraco's USP compared to other content management systems?
Well, a big one is, a lot of people choose us because we are .NET and because we are open source. And I think those are two very, very clear USPs. We're not the only ones that are .NET. We're not the only ones that are USPs or that's open source. But we are by a far amount, we're the most popular one that are both. By getting .NET, you get all of the benefits from a huge ecosystem from Microsoft, and by being open source, Michael just did he said it so beautifully. I mean, you get, whenever there's someone else fixing a problem, you get that fix yourself as well, and we have a very large ecosystem all across the world with developers, but also with partners. So if you're if wherever you're looking for someone who can work with Umbraco, you'll find great talented people that are passionate and then that can really add to it. Like the ecosystem is partners, but it's also like add-ons and packages and stuff like that you would use to enrich your Umbraco project, where there's a lot of benefits from that. So I guess open source and .NET is probably the two biggest ones.
I would say the community is right up there as well.
Yeah,
yeah, 100%.
I have experienced it firsthand. We love it.
I've just got
Right.
one point to add to that on the community, just going to Umbraco events and working with Filip's sort of like colleagues and knowing how much my team appreciate the support that we get as well is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you for that add-on.
That's good.
Michael, I have one question coming in from you from the chat now is how do you get buy-in not only from the C-suite, but from teams who have previously been working in silos and managing their own different sites? So how do you get them all to come together?
Well, one of the things I do is I go to a lot of meetings before these projects actually hit the ground, very kind of embryonic projects where people have an idea. I'm very approachable. Nothing is too difficult. And what I like to do is to say, well, that's a great idea. Shall I show you a webpage of how we can do that? And they go, yeah. Should we do it later on today? You can have it for tomorrow and you can present it back to the director. And they're like, yes, great. Because I have control, I can get them involved. And it's okay, then here's how you become the editor. Why don't you go in and just change some words to see what you want to try and do to kind of take it from the Latin text into some real words. And they go, great, we're going to have it later on today, tomorrow. And they automatically start saying, what else can we do? Well, actually, I can provide this feature you've seen in the other part of the website. It's a module. I can give you that straight away. And so anything on the website that you see, you can have. And so that just makes their life so much easier. And so they can come to me and say, could I have this? Yes, here's the module it's in. What else do you want to put in there? And it just gives them a bit of excitement and it gives them some control over that kind of content build without having to worry about all the other stuff that goes with it, the hosting, the domain name, and I can provide stats on the analytics. So that's how I work with them really early on to give them the trust they need and then just provide them. So they're looking at the business, and I'm looking at the website for their business.
Mm-hmm. Good points. And I suppose, again, it's going back to learning really about, what is their pain point and giving them the biggest headaches and showing them the outcome and the solutions that you can offer them with the least amount of effort, I guess, on their part.
Always.
Well, thank you again. I think if there are no more questions, then we can wrap it up there. So a big thank you again to our panelists, Filip, Michael, and Kat. Today's been a really, really great session. I've definitely taken away a couple of nuggets that I can share with the attendees after this. A final reminder that I will share around the recording as soon as it's ready. And, you can feel free to share it on with your networks or anyone that might not have been able to attend. But thank you, everyone, and we'll leave it there. Cheers.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.